right, and welcome to another episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and we got another jam-packed show for you guys today. This is now episode number 4, so we're moving right along, a good first week. And yeah, like I said, we got a lot to talk about. But first, before I do that, two things to bring up for you guys in the description of this video. Well, first, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on the video. The other thing is make sure to check out the website, gsmcspodcast.com, either to advertise us, to check us out, also for donations and tips as well. And then the other thing is to make sure to subscribe to the Patreon, which is also in the description as well, to get exclusive content for every sports podcast here on the GSMC Sports Podcast Network. So just wanted to do that. Now let's get into what the show is going to be about for today. So obviously we're going to talk about the games from yesterday, go over the scores, and talk about the updated standings for the current what it is right now, the current standings, whether it's division races and the wild cards. So that's going to basically be something that we're going to do every day, just because we're in the last couple weeks of the season, and playoff race is heating up. So that'll be the first segment. Then in the second segment, I'm actually going to talk about the top performers from yesterday. So whether it's a pitcher, position player. So there's several players that I listed that I'll talk about in that. And then in the final segment, we're going to talk about the youth movement in New York baseball. So we'll go over the Yankees and the Mets and what I think their future is going to be like for those respective teams. Obviously, the Yankees are my team, but got to give the Mets a little bit of love as well, because obviously they both play in New York. So before I get into that, though, I just wanted to go talk about something that happened to me last night. So went into New York City to watch the football game. Great game, by the way. So happy that football is back. Was a little surprised that the Lions were able to defeat the Chiefs, especially, in Arrowhead, and the Chiefs raising the Super Bowl championship banner. But it was a great game. So happy football is back. But so when I go to the city, obviously I take the train, and coming back after the game was over, I usually go to Grand Central. Now, I was by Radio City, so, Avenue of America's, 48th Street and 49th Street, around that area. So I went to an elevator that takes you where I need to be in Grand Central Station on 47th. So I get over there. All I had to do was go a couple blocks and then cross over 3 blocks. So I go to that elevator that I always take, and it was blocked off. So now I gotta go all the way back to 6th Avenue, go from 48th Street all the way to 34th, and then cross over to 7th to get to Penn Station and go through the spot that I usually go through. So I end up doing that. I get to Penn Station. I'm going to where I need to be, and that entrance is blocked off. So now I'm thinking, I'm going to miss this train now. And I was supposed to take a train home that was going to get me home, a little after 1 o'clock in the morning. Instead, I ended up getting home at almost 2 in the morning. So I thought I was going to end up missing that train as well. I had to they were doing construction, or something was going on. So I had to look for another entrance. I found one. I was able to get in, and I was able to get on my train. But that was a mess last night. Just a little bit of a tangent to go off of, but that was rough. That was rough. So, but yeah, that's my story. So let's get into the games from last night. So it wasn't a full slate of games. There was 6 games last night, so we'll run right through them. So the Yankees, they were on a hot streak, winning 5 in a row, sweeping the Astros, took the first 2 of 3 from Detroit. But the Detroit Tigers were all over the Yankees last night. And again, was happy that football was back, because I had my attention more on that. Once the Yankees were down big, when it was 6-1 or 5-1, I turned it off. I was like, I'm not watching. I don't want to watch this. Let's focus on football. But yeah, the Tigers 10-3 over the Yankees. Carlos Rodon, who I did talk about yesterday, he just continues to have a rough first season with the Yankees. He's now 2-5 with a 6.6 ERA. 8 hits, 7 earned runs. That's not what you want. That's not what you want. And it's. I think Yankee fans, including myself, should give him a second chance, and let's see how he does next year. But this really has been a season to forget for Carlos Rodon. So the Tigers, they pick up a win. Yankees drop back down to 500. So now the Yankees now go from 6.5 to now 7 games back in the wild card race. But again, they're not going to make it. I mean, even when they won 5 in a row, they a lot of things have to go right for them to make it, and it's just it's going to take a lot. So that's the first game. Mariners and Rays. This is a big series, especially because these teams are in the wild card race. They have the first 2 spots, but the Mariners, they could, I mean, we'll look at it in a second, but the Mariners, if they could, sweep the Rays or take the series, that closes the gap when it comes to having the top wild card spot, and that makes a huge difference because then you're the team that has home field advantage. But the Mariners, they took it 1-0 over the Rays. Luis Castillo got the win. I'll talk about him in the next segment. Rays offense got blanked. They only had 4 hits. So there's that game. Then you have the Dodgers and the Marlins. Dodgers all over the Marlins, 10-0. And the Marlins, they were playing really well. They took the first 2 games, and then the Dodgers just completely destroyed them yesterday. So, but I'll go into more detail with that. Some of the guys are part of that top performers list when it comes to the Dodgers. So Dodgers improved to 85 and 54 on the season. Then we move on to the Cardinals and the Braves. Cardinals, they took the last 2 games from the Braves, but the Braves got back on track, defeating the Cardinals 8-5. So, good way to at least, I guess salvage the final game of the series. They go on to play Pittsburgh now. Diamondbacks get a big win over the Cubs, 6-2. So right now they actually sit as the final wild card team in the National League. And then the Angels and the Guardians, Angels won 3-2. So at least they were able to kind of snap their losing streak. They got a walk-off last night against Emmanuel Clase, who's one of the best closers in baseball. Randall Grichuk actually had a walk-off single last night. And spoiler alert, I didn't put him as a top performer. I mean, he did get a big hit. I guess he could be an honorable mention, but yeah. So Angels pick up a win. Guardians take the loss. So now, it's really so we got a couple minutes left in this first segment, but yeah, I mean tonight's games, we got a full slate. The Phillies and the Marlins, they play each other, so that's going to be a big series. Cubs continue their series with the Diamondbacks, so there's a lot of playoff implications, with these games and these upcoming series tonight. And we're like I said, we're only a couple weeks away, and it's going to be here before you know it. I mean, we pretty much know that the Dodgers and the Braves, they wrapped up their divisions. The Twins, they got theirs, and it's really going to be a matter of who the Twins are going to be playing and whoever's going to get that final wild card spot. Because I'm going to be honest, I honestly see the Twins getting knocked out by whatever wild card team that ends up getting that third wild card spot. I mean, they're 6 games over 500. I mean, again, they're going to have home field advantage, and I could be wrong, but I can see them being upset in the first round by that last wild card team. I think the Rangers and the Blue Jays are better. So whoever it ends up being, or if it's the Astros, they're looking really good, but if they struggle and they end up having to settle for that, and either the Mariners or Texas takes over first place again, I mean, you're probably going to take them. I mean, look at how the Mariners performed in the postseason last year. I mean, they got swept by the Astros, but they could have won those games. The first game, I mean, they lost on a walk-off. Yordan Alvarez hit a walk-off off of Robbie Ray. And the third game, that went into 18 innings. And they had that huge comeback against the Blue Jays in the wild card round. So it's going to be we'll see what happens with all of that. But yeah, as it currently stands, I think as of right now, it's going to be a fight between the Blue Jays and an AL West team, because it's going to be a revolving door the rest of the year. I think because and like I said, I think yesterday or one of the previous shows, the Rangers and the Mariners play each other 7 times left in the with the few weeks we have left in the year. So that's going to be a huge deal. Also, the Blue Jays and the Rangers actually are playing each other in an upcoming series as well. So yeah, there's a lot happening, and then you got the Yankees who are 7 games back, Red Sox are 5, but at this point, it's not likely that these teams are going to be able to make up that ground, especially last night because it was annoying hearing some Yankee fans guaranteeing a win yesterday. It was like, listen, Carlos Rodon really has been pitching good, and Eduardo Rodriguez has been pitching good for Detroit, so I'm not guaranteeing anything. And sure enough, Carlos Rodon did not show up yesterday, but what are you going to do? If the Yankees, would have played better, they wouldn't be in this position, which I will get more into in the final segment of today's show when I talk about the youth movement of both New York teams. So with that, we're going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, I'm going to talk about the top performers from yesterday's games and again continue our discussion with the playoff race. So stick around. We'll be right back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast. Thing I wanted to address, well, not really address, but another thing I wanted to add to the show, and I was thinking about this before I came on today, is also having like an Immaculate Grid segment. Now, for those of you that don't know what that is, Immaculate Grid is it's a website. It's not an app, but it's a website. You just put immaculategrid.com in Safari or whatever in Google, and it's a grid that has teams on filling out a column, and then teams on the top row, and you have to put a player in the corresponding box. So like if you have like the Yankees, if the box on the top left corner, I'm really bad at explaining things, but the box on like the top left corner, you would have like the Yankees and the Red Sox. You would have to put in a player that played for both the Yankees and the Red Sox, and you'd have to do that for everything else. And well, sometimes they also do stats too, like Hall of Famer and like Red Sox. So you put Ted Williams, for example. But most people that are watching this know exactly what I'm talking about. So what I was thinking was have a segment that is Immaculate Grid, because you talk about players that used to play and things like that, and especially getting the audience involved. That really would be awesome too, is get their thoughts. But to make sure I don't like spoil Immaculate Grid for that day, so I was thinking I talk about the Immaculate Grid from the previous day and make that into a segment. So I don't know. I think it would be a pretty cool idea, especially because there's going to be times during the off season where there's going to be like not that much to talk about. So I think it would be a great idea. It's a lot of fun. And they added obviously the NBA. They added an NBA grid. They added an NFL grid. Soccer. Hockey. There's everything for it, and it's a lot of fun. It's a good way to test your baseball knowledge, and and sometimes you can think of guys that just haven't played in a while, and it's just kind of cool to it's a fun thing to do. I know they used to come out with the grid at like midnight. Now they do it at 9 a.m. And I know some of my friends were complaining about that, because it was always fun doing it at midnight and then talking about it, what players everybody got. So that's just something that I was thinking about. But that might happen more towards the off season, when the season's kind of winded down and the World Series is behind us and there's not a lot to talk about. But that was just something that I thought about, that I think would be a pretty cool idea. Talk about everybody's Immaculate Grids. But yeah, so yeah, that was another minor thing to this segment that I wanted to add. So we talked about the top performances from yesterday, and then just the idea of doing a immaculate grid. But yeah, so that's pretty much that with this segment. So in the next segment, we're going to talk about the youth movement in baseball. Well, New York baseball. It's definitely something that I wanted to touch upon. Especially because both teams had high aspirations. New York teams had high aspirations going into the season, and it didn't really pan out the way they hoped it to be. So, and it's going to be a Yankee and a Mets segment, but to talk about those teams, it's something I know well. And yeah, so that'll pretty much wrap up the show, and then that'll be it for this week. And then next week is the full hour show, and then the half-hour exclusive content for the Patreon. So there's a lot going on. It's crazy how fast this first week went, and especially having the night that I had last night. It just, yeah, it was an experience to say the least. What went on, and I apologize if people got bored of that. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but that was just something that was pretty aggravating. When you think you're going to get home a half hour earlier than you're going to, and especially getting home really late, and that doesn't end up happening, and then there's always a blockage wherever you're going to try to get into where you need to be. It was a time yesterday, but we were able to get through it and persevere, and we're here. So yeah, with that now, we are going to take our final break of the show, and then when we come back, I alluded to it, we're going to talk about the youth movement in New York baseball. So stick around. We will be right back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast. All right, so we are back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast, and for the final segment of today's show, we're going to talk about the New York youth movement, New York baseball. So, obviously, like I alluded to it in the last segment, these are two teams that had high aspirations, the New York Mets and the New York Yankees. And, a lot of people didn't expect the seasons that they were going to have. I looked at the Mets from the outside as a Yankee fan, and when they signed Justin Verlander, listen, the guy was going to start more games than DeGrom, but unfortunately he got hurt, so he missed some time. And they also signed Kodai Senga, who has actually had a very good season for the Mets. I was like, I don't know if the Mets are as good as or better than they were last year. I feel like they're kind of the same. And then in the World Baseball Classic, their all-star closer, Edwin Diaz, gets hurt. He's out the rest of the whole year. And they had to, anoint David Robertson as their closer. So, already it got off to a rough start. And then you could tell Mets definitely missed Diaz because there were a lot of games that the bullpen couldn't handle and lost leads for them. Robertson blew some games, and it was rough. And also Pete Alonso, he got hurt. He's having a good season, but he was out for a while. And things kind of just fell apart. The Mets really offensively weren't as good. Starling Marte, Met fans just want to get rid of him after he had a productive season last year for them. They're kind of done with him at this point. So they traded away a lot of their big piece, some of their big pieces. Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander both got moved. Tommy Pham, they traded as well, who I talked about before. So actually, to look at the look at the trades really quick that the Mets made. So they traded Verlander. They also traded Mark Hanna. I forgot to mention him too. And they also traded Robertson. So Robertson, they traded to the, I almost said the Dolphins. Got football on the mind. They traded him to the Marlins for a second baseman, Marco Vargas, and catcher Ronald Hernandez. So, and some people were saying not really that big on that trade. They think that, if the Mets would have waited a little bit longer, they probably could have got something better for Robertson. But that's what they decided to do. They traded Mark Hanna for a right-handed pitcher from the Brewers, Justin Jarvis. So that was the other trade that they did. With Verlander, they got a pair of minor league outfielders. They got Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford from the Astros. And then Scherzer, they got a shortstop, and it happens to be Ronald Acuna's brother. So that's the majority. That's what they decided to do with those guys. And I don't know how these players are going to be. I'll be honest. I have no idea. They could turn out to be future Hall of Famers, all of them. Or they could be part of future deals that they make, down the line. I have no idea. And the Mets were not really in as good of a spot as like the Yankees were, even though the Yankees weren't doing good either when it came to a playoff spot. So it made more sense, I guess, for the Mets to sell off a lot of guys because I guess they just didn't seem like they had a chance. And to bring up, some of their prospects, like Francisco Alvarez, like Mark Vientos, like Ronnie Mauricio, who Met fans were clamoring for the organization to bring him up. I hope I used that in the right sentence. So, it's the thing that I don't like is that they're going into next year. And again, Kodai Senga has had a very good season for the Mets. He struggled a little bit in the beginning, but he's been better as of late. He's your top starter. Then you have, I think Quintana you have for another year. Carrasco has been awful, but I think he's off the team. But you have David Peterson, you have Tyler McGill, your rotation is kind of a mess. So at least like if you were to keep Verlander, which I think I kind of lean more towards them doing that, even though he's 40. But at least you have him for next year. Max Scherzer, he was kind of Verlander still looked like he still has stuff left in the tank. Scherzer, he's been in decline, especially going to the Mets. He was good last year, but in big spots, he didn't deliver. And that's why, Met fans were kind of just done with him. And hence why you see the other night, the Rangers lose 12-3 to the Astros, and Scherzer gave up, I think, 7 earned runs. So, yeah, Max Scherzer, I can understand why they would trade him. Verlander, I think they should have kept him, unless he wanted out. I'm not 100% sure. Max Scherzer, after they traded David Robertson, went to the front office to see what was going on, and they probably told him, listen, we're going to rebuild. And he's like, all right, then I want out. And then they traded him to the Rangers, with where Jacob deGrom is. He was kind of deGrom's replacement, I guess. But, yeah, so I guess Verlander was probably like, well, I'd rather go to a team that's contending, which makes sense. And, of course, when the Mets were going to trade Verlander, it seemed, and you started seeing stuff about the Astros, being interested in getting him back, I said, he's going back to Houston. It's going to happen. And sure enough, he went back to Houston. And I did see him pitch against the Yankees earlier, beginning of August, and the Yankees actually won. I thought that was going to be, another Verlander masterful start against the Yankees, but he actually didn't look that good. But it was a close game, but he didn't really pitch, as good as he usually does against the Yankees. And he pitched against them, I think, twice already this year. Yeah, he pitched again. It was Cole against Verlander at Citi Field, and then he pitched again at Yankee Stadium. So, yeah, I mean, the Astros, they got him back. But, yeah, the biggest thing for me with the Mets is just what their rotation is going to be like for next year. That's my concern. And, let's kind of look at how some of the prospects, the young guys, have been doing. Francisco Alvarez has actually been, he's shown some power with the Mets. He's had some big moments for them. So he could be a player for them moving forward. And another guy, I didn't really talk about him, Brett Beatty. So, he's kind of had a rough season as well. He's been sent down because he's been struggling. He's got 7 home runs, 29 RBIs on the season, 218 batting average, 614 OPS, and yeah, he's made some bad plays in the field. So you're hoping that gets figured out. Ronnie Mauricio actually, in his brief stint so far, he's batting over 400, 895 OPS, 1 RBI. His numbers aren't jumping off the screen like Jason Dominguez has with the Yankees, but I mean, from the outside looking in, so far so good with him. Mark Vientos, there's not really a role for this guy on this team. He doesn't really have a position, and he's got a 613 OPS, 214 batting average, 4 home runs, 13 RBIs. So there's, I don't know what they're going to do with him because it seems like he doesn't really have a role with this team. And I'm trying to look for Alvarez because I was just going to look at the box score from the other day, and he's not even. All right, so now I got him from 2 days ago. So Alvarez, 22 home runs. So yeah, the power's there, 51 RBIs, 216 batting average, 730 OPS. So you would like to see the batting average, the OPS a little bit better, but the power's there. So he could be a player for them moving forward. Yeah, so with the Mets, you got to see how the rotation is for next year. I mean, they got the richest owner in baseball, so we'll see what Steve Cohen decides to do. I know Met fans don't like Billy Epler, their general manager, so, we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, you're going to get Diaz back, hopefully healthy. Maybe you sign some free agent pitchers. Maybe you got to make a trade. You got to also add to this lineup too, because especially now with Starlin Marte underperforming, you got to go out and maybe get another bat, which I've been saying for the last couple of years. I think they need another bat, and they thought they were going to get that in Correa, and that ended up not happening. So yeah, so that's talking about the Mets. So with the Yankees now, it just stinks that it was like too little, too late bringing up the young guys: Pereira, Jason Dominguez, Austin Wells. Peraza, it's, I wish they would have did that sooner because the Yankees did something. They decided just not do anything at the trade deadline. They got a couple of relief pitchers. One of them they just, got rid of. And then Kenyon Middleton, he's on the IL now. So they really didn't do anything. They thought that they were going to just get Judge back, get Rodon back, Nestor Cortez, and everything was going to be fine. And that was not the case. They get Judge back, and they end up going on that 9-game losing streak. And I thought that would have happened when Judge was out, but it ended up happening while he was playing. So, yeah, I mean, it got to a certain point where it was like, let's just bring up all the young kids, and they decided to do that. And the interesting thing about that is that it was Hal Steinbrenner that said, we're bringing these guys up. Brian Cashman supposedly was opposed to bringing up the young guys. And, it really just makes you wonder, something's just not right. And I just don't understand why Brian Cashman's like so opposed to like bringing up the young guys and just admitting that, maybe some of the decisions you made weren't the best. Because if it was up to Brian Cashman, it looks like it'd be Josh Donaldson playing third base instead of Oswald Peraza. Harrison Bader would probably still be on this team because he was a guy that the Yankees put on waivers. Reds picked him up. But Jason Dominguez, I mean, he's been everything that he's been advertised to be. The Martian, 3 home runs already. He's either going to be our center fielder or our left fielder, depending on what the Yankees might do in free agency, because, myself included, I want them to try to go out and get Cody Bellinger if they're able to. And, the one thing, and it's something listening to, other Yankee podcasts, is, when the Yankees bring up a prospect, lately it's just been like, there's growing pains. Like Anthony Volpe, he's been starting the whole season, and there's been some growing pains with that. He had the uppercut with his swing that was, making him miss a lot of pitches. And then, the chicken parm dinner with Austin Wells, they were able to tweak something, and he's been better since then. But we want somebody to come up like Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez and just rake. And Jason Dominguez has done that. 3 home runs. in the first, 5, 6 games that he's played in. And it's been exciting. It really has. And he's a switch hitter. He's built for the ballpark. And I'm really excited to see, what he can do. So far, when you look at Ronnie Mauricio and Jason Dominguez, although Dominguez, again, his stats jump out at you more than Mauricio, but Mauricio batting 421 in the games that he's played in so far, I mean, that's got to get you excited. Um, so it's going to be exciting. And to see what they could do next year, we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, I'm hoping that Austin Wells is a good player because the Yankees with catcher, it's kind of just, it hasn't really been good for a while now, and we're kind of looking for some stability at that position. And the Yankees with them, it's something I've been saying for a long time, get more left-handed hitters. Austin Wells is a left-handed hitter, Jason Dominguez is a switch hitter, and they got to get younger. And I think a good mix between the veterans and the youth, I think that's perfect. With the lineup that they've been running out lately has definitely been the best lineup that it has been all year, because you don't have guys that are kind of past their primes and not putting together competitive at-bats. Although when you listen to Aaron Boone talk, especially, some of those games where they struck out 17, 18 times, he would say, hey, we put up some good at-bats. But, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm just, both teams have their issues. And, listen, I could talk about this for for hours, but, you only got a certain amount of time to do that. But, yeah, we'll see how it happens. They both got their problems that hopefully they could solve in the offseason, and New York baseball can be what it was last year and not what it is this year. So, yeah, that's basically it for today's show. That segment flew by. I talked more about the Mets than I did the Yankees, so look at that. So with that is all the time that we have for today. I thank you for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And also, again, a reminder, check out the website, gsmcspodcast.com, and then also the Patreon. Make sure to subscribe to that for exclusive content. That'll be coming up next week. So until next week, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. And I will talk to you guys next week. Take care.